if you don't have your core set of master data validated, verified, and continuously monitored, then all you're doing is actually incurring risk because you're not aware of what that change could actually do or be impactful from a financial perspective. Thank you. That's really opened my eyes. And David, to take that, and I know you've been doing a lot of data cleansing, etc. There's all these compliances. To me, there's no borders anymore when it comes to financial compliance and risk as well. What are the biggest challenges that you are facing from a financial crime perspective, especially in the environment that you work in?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Great question. I mean, probably to follow on from what Nicola was just talking about there. I think data is a key one, really. When we look at the world we're in these days, and the amount of information available, I think leveraging that data is quite key. Making sure you have robust data governance, the right data entry, right data input and validation. Financial crime, much like most other processes, I would imagine within most organizations, is simply a downstream user of that data from when it first comes in. So making sure it's there, it's cleansed, it's accurate, and you have timely updates is going to be quite key to making sure you keep on top of that risk. I think the biggest challenges we probably face from a practitioner's perspective, and a lot of this is the regulation itself and the pace of change within regulation. I was just going to talk very quickly just to give some context around this as well, because it was quite interesting for me. There was a recent report issued by the NASDAQ, which really looked at the amount of illicit funds flowing through the global financial system, which is quite a staggering amount. They calculated $3.1 trillion, sorry. So you think about that. I mean, I did a rudimentary Google search, right, looking at that in terms of what that would mean as an economy by itself, right? If you compare that to likes of the US, UK, what does that mean? It would mean that would be, if we were treating financial crime by itself, would be the 5th largest economy in the world. So that gives you a kind of size of the scale of the problem that we face, right? And as a result of that, there's continual pace of change, continual updates within legislation and regulation to try and combat what is obviously a huge societal problem that we have. There was, just by comparison, there was a World Bank report about 10 years ago, which calculated anywhere from about $800 billion to $2 trillion was being flowed through the financial system. So within the space of 10 years, we're now calculating an extra $1 trillion on top of that. So it's fairly monumental in that respect. So that kind of puts it into perspective a little bit. In that regards, I'd say it's probably a highly politicized subject anyway, but you always have new legislation, new regulation coming out to try and make a dent in that for whatever dent it can do. So if I was to just give you an example, the UK Parliament have just passed an act called the UK Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act, right? And that's there to well, many things. One of the things it's introducing is a failure to prevent fraud offence. So a corporate offence where if you are of a certain threshold, certain size, certain employee base, there is an offence, corporate offence there for you to failing to prevent fraud, essentially, but fraud that is for the benefit of the organisation. So as a practitioner, bringing that in-house, understanding what that means, understanding risk profile against that, what processes we have in place, what's reasonable procedures under the guidance, what do we have to do? That's kind of a day in the life of a practitioner in financial crime. It's about absorbing that, understanding what that means for you and how do you mitigate that appropriately. And that's just one of a subset of many differing changes, that if you are in a global organization, you're facing that, across many different jurisdictions, many different competing pieces of regulation as well.
And if I can stay with you on that, because I think it's really important to talk about corporate responsibility is critical, not just in that financial sector, but how important is your understanding of the financial crime landscape in conjunction with other areas such as sustainability and human rights, etc.? Because to me, you can't really look at any of those in silo anymore. They have so many joint implications.
Yeah, I think, you're absolutely right, Michelle. You can't really. And I think that's where a joined up collaborative approach is usually required. I think if you look at it from the ESG lens, G being the governance side, that's really where I would see financial crime in that respect really kind of sitting. But financial crime in itself, I mean, those are kind of more predicate offences, right? The human trafficking, modern slavery aspect, financial crime and money laundering in particular is just the kind of the follow-on piece from that. It's really a case of coordinating more than anything else. If I talk from a Beazley perspective, ESG is high on the agenda for us. We've recently introduced heads of social impact as an example to look at our societal aspects of that under modern slavery and and those kind of topics and those areas. But it's something that it's not going to work as an organization if you look at this in silo, and similarly with the data as well.